Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with the man who demanded not one, but two stunt doubles on 1979's Shadow of Fear, just in case anything happened to the first. He had a spare. Ike Eisenmann. Ike, how are you today?
I'm great. I love that picture because I kind of forgot that I had two stunt doubles on that show, and it was mainly because, yeah, there were some serious actual stunts that had to be done, but that show had more wild animals, more animals in it than anything I've ever worked on before. And one of those guys, sort of the I don't want to say the younger looking of the two, but the more teenage looking one, he stood in for me when it came to like dealing with close proximity to the wolves and a lot of the dogs and some of the hairier stuff with all these different animals. Yet I still had to do a lot of the stuff myself, so which was fun, you know.
Well, I wanted to ask about that. Is that usual that there are two stunt people for the actors? Is that I'd never heard of that.
I don't know what's usual or necessarily unusual, especially these days with all the action movies. I mean, you need different stunt doubles that have different skill sets. Not everybody can do everything. Like fighting versus driving a car. You'd have a stunt driver that drove for you. It wouldn't necessarily be the same guy that stood in for the more dangerous. Then you have somebody who there used to be the stuntmen who only did high falls from big heights into airbags. And as a matter of fact, see, we're already digressing. No one even knows what the show is about today. They're going to think this about this.
I'll get to that.
But I think our audience might be a little interested in these tidbits. The actual stuntman, and I have forgotten his name, who invented the airbag, did a stunt on Return from Witch Mountain. In the very beginning, when Anthony James' character is ordered by Christopher Lee to go climb up to the top of a building, and he's he's a fear of heights and has him walk along the edge, and then he falls off. That is this particular stuntman, and that was what he did. He just did high falls, and he had he had the world record for the highest fall of 300 some odd feet. I'm not quoting it correctly here, I'm sure, but into an airbag.
In the future, now it makes me think we should probably look in. I'll get on that to look up. Maybe we'll do a show on stunts and I'll try to get some stunt people on.
Oh, that would be a blast, because I've always I worked with oh good gosh, the guy who directed Smokey and the Bandit. Oh, darn it, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was the stunt coordinator on another Disney show I did called Fremont and the Mountain Men, or Kit Carson and the Mountain Men. And so I met him way back when he was a major stunt coordinator, and then he ended up becoming a director and directed the Smokey and the Bandit films and some other movies. Really, really, really wild guy. They're the biggest. Hal Needham, thank you very much. I knew you were going to look it up while I was yammering and stammering and stumbling over myself. Hal Needham, yeah, he was. The stunt guys were always unique, and we should do a show about it, because they were the biggest personalities on any set, bigger than any actor or anything. They were way bigger than life, and that's how they fed their daredevil.
I am going to get on that.
I think excellent idea.
Now, as you can see by the picture behind me, today we decided we're going to do a show on children's television shows, from when we were younger. And this came about because when we were doing the Magic Garden show, I was all excited, and I kind of go, we have Carol and Paula from the Magic Garden. and you had no idea who they were, and it shocked me, and then we realized later that they're regional shows, and it never even occurred to me, and it makes sense, and I kind of didn't even think about that growing up. And so, whereas people like in the Northeast knew the Magic Garden, all my friends loved that show. You had no idea about them, but you grew up in a television show environment because your dad ran, was the host of a TV show. So, which was the Cadet Don show, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it was called. It was only the Houston, Texas area. Actually, I just learned today because I was trying to do some research on these regional shows, and his show was listed, but also listed that it was broadcast in El Paso as well as Houston. It didn't go as far and wide as Dallas.
So it wasn't all over Texas. It was just like in a couple of cities in Texas.
No, it was just in Houston, which is a huge market. I mean, during those days, Houston, Texas was the fastest growing city in the United States, and it outpaced, a lot of the big cities in terms of overall population for a while. So it's a large city. It's not a metropolis like, New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, but yeah, it's a large television market. And his show was on the air for 9 years and shares, I mean, from 1958 to, what do I say? I think we left 68, 59 to 1968, something like that. And
do you know how? Yeah. I mean, do you know how he got involved in the show to begin with?
I'm intimately involved with that story, because I did actually in terms of just some preliminary research for my memoir. I wanted to have a better understanding of how he got into the business, and I have all of his memorabilia from his career, because my father always wanted to be an entertainer from when he was a teenager. And when he went to college, he did all these theatrical shows and these kind of comedy shows, and performed and sang and danced and all that stuff in the Houston area. And kind of, I don't want to say he became a little bit of a known personality, but these were those were the talent pools for local television to go and find performers for whatever kind of programming that they wanted to put together. And KTRK, which is a very big station, Channel 13 in Houston, the owner of the station had an idea for a new show because NASA had was just breaking ground or starting to build or close to being complete, building mission control there in Houston, Texas. So it was a big part of the burgeoning space program. And he wanted to help, like, piggyback on this big operation in the national news it was getting, by doing a space themed kind of children's show. And they figured they could pull guests from the facility, and so he came up with this idea for an astronaut type character called Cadet Don, and needed someone
so the whole
to
show
be
was
the personality.
Space themed, was NASA themed.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, not everything. It was just Cadet Don, which is kind of, it's a funny name. I think it's a very catchy name, but that denotes a student as opposed to a seasoned astronaut, in a sense. But yeah, he wore a flight suit, and actually ended up, his costuming evolved over time to be a little bit more of almost a Star Trek-y kind of space suit that he wore on the air. The set was like the control center of a spaceship, and it had spaceship style decorations. And
this came out before Star Trek.
Oh yeah, this is like 58,
yeah.
59. And somehow the station owner my father had met, or my father had been trying to get a job at the station. That's what it was. No, he got a job there because he wanted to get into broadcasting. And so he was doing anything and everything he could at the station, and of course hawking himself as a performer as much as possible. And then finally the two just kind of came together, and the station owner asked my father if he'd like to host the show, and he said, yeah, sure. And so the show was born. And I have to say, from just looking back on it, it was 90 minutes of live children's programming a day, 6 days a week. And I actually have a copy. I should have, maybe I'll be able to pull it and put it up on the YouTube version of our show, because I saw when he had one daily schedule left over, that my father did the schedule every day, came up with, whatever the segments were going to be. And it was like, man, it was like if every 15 minutes or half an hour was some new thing. And there were cartoon blocks. It was very similar to a lot of the shows we're going to talk about today, format wise, because it was entertaining. There were special guests, everyone from astronauts, real astronauts like Edward White II, and a number of other astronauts that came on the show. Chuck Connors appeared on the show. Pat Boone appeared on his show. So whenever someone was in town, that the station could get a hold of to come and do a little interview or just a little appearance on the show, they would. So there was that segment, and then my father would sing some songs. Sometimes he did little exercise segments to teach kids basic exercise. And then he had a dental hygiene segment. He talked about food. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff, eating properly. And he had a sidekick that was an alien that lived in his spaceship and was rolled onto the set. And I just happened to have him right here.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. See, it's so funny. The second you have a puppet on your hand, you start moving this in time with your own speaking. I am no ventriloquist. I can't even pretend to do it. But yeah, this is Seymour. Hello. Seymour is made out of
that's felt. The original one. That's the one that was used.
That's one of the original ones. Yes, there were about awesome. eight or nine of them over the course of time, because they fell apart. And my mother and my grandmother made these. So yeah, it's essentially like yarn, yellow buttons for eyes, and it's felt. And my father had his hand up inside the spaceship, and Seymour would come out and talk to the kids at home, and it was really great stuff. And the Cadet Don show was a very, very big hit in Texas. It was extremely
I can imagine. Popular. That's what I was going to ask, because we're talking about like kind of like the height of like the space craze. You know, when NASA, like everyone's like, we're going into space, we're going to, we want to land on the moon. So this was like kind of, I could see this being really popular, especially in Texas, right there.
No, it definitely was. And, there is a Cadet Don Facebook page around, because people like to reminisce about it and post some things, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things, and again, this was something I kind of learned, was a common thing that was done on a lot of these shows, especially if they were live shows. There was something about engaging the audience and saying hello to children, by name or whatever, to personalize that experience between the young audience member and the show hosts. My father did a segment.
So like kids would write in, and your dad would address kids.
Well, no, I mean these other shows did this. I don't know if that's where my father got this idea, but one day he thought, how can we make this more personal? So it's like I'm actually talking to you at home. So one day they just decided they were going to announce 3 birthdays. Kevin, happy birthday today. Your present is under your bed, so go take a look and find it, and happy birthday to you. And he did the same thing to like 2 or 3 other boys and girls on the air, and they literally got swamped with letters by the next day, people coming to the station and dropping requests off. Will you please announce my child's birthday on the air? This is where his present or her present's going to be. This is their birth date. And it just became a huge thing. And if you, I haven't really looked at the Cadet Don Facebook page in a very, very long time, but a lot of people who've posted things on there have said, "Gosh, I remember when he told me where my birthday present was. It was the most amazing thing. It was incredible." And there is a fantastic story that followed my father all the way through his career. He eventually left, the performance side of show business and became a prop master for movies and TV shows. And he was working on a series with Randy Quaid and Jonathan Winters, and I forgot the title of it. But when Randy realized who my father was, he absolutely flipped out. He says, "You're Cadet Don. You're Cadet Don. Oh my God, I've met Cadet Don." Because he and Dennis Quaid were from Houston. That's where they grew up. And one afternoon, Randy got on the speaker and asked my dad to come up to the booth. There was someone he wanted him to meet. So my father goes up there and he walks into the control room, and there sitting Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. And Dennis just turned into a little kid and said, "Oh my God, it's Cadet Don. I got to tell you, I got my present. You told me where it was and I got it." I mean, so this was how powerful this stuff was on these shows. And I know Magic Garden did something similar like that. They would mention names or say names or something like that. And a lot of people said,
saying the name.
Yeah, you never said my name,
people,
or you said my name. And so
Right.
there was definitely across all these local children's shows, something consistent about doing things like that to
Engage the audience.
bring the kids into the show. And my father's show was no different. So yeah, he was quite the celebrity in Houston. He did personal appearances all the time, and we never had to pay for food at Jack in the Box because they were a sponsor on the show. And so we ate there all the time, which was the coolest thing ever. I mean, you just to drive up to the window and have them just hand you food was amazing. So yeah, it was quite an incredible experience. And yeah, it was my first time on television. When I was 2 years old, I appeared on a show.
That's it. So you made your show. So he brought you on. You on frequently, or
what we did was, I think we made it. My brother and I both. By the time I was 2, I guess I was well behaved enough. And actually, as anyone who's watching the YouTube version of this will see, right now I'm going to be running my video clip that I have. It's probably the only footage from my father's show that's still in existence, and only because someone his close friend, it was a cinematographer, filmed me on his show from off camera with a 16 millimeter camera. So it's visual material of me on the show, having my birthday, opening my presents. A couple of the guests, one of the guests on the show is giving me presents, and a little bit of the set and my father's setup on the show. So after 2 years, every birthday subsequent to that, my brother and I would make an appearance on the show. Yeah.
Well, I want to get. They didn't keep all the video from it. It's gone.
Oh no. No, videotape was incredibly expensive, and I've even read in a couple of some of these other shows where there were personal mentions about people, and they're going back to the 50s and 60s trying to see if they can recover an episode of these shows that they had some connection to. What they did was they only kept it for about 24 hours in case something bad happened, or they would only keep 2 or 3 shows to play once in a while, but they just taped over the tape every day.
I read that for other shows too. That is so terrible. It's just all this history.
But I mean, they had no budgets. These were local shows. They were national shows. The national shows, of course, were taped and then distributed syndication wise to other stations. So they had to provide some kind of a hard copy for them to be able to be broadcast.
I
But
think it's
yeah,
it's on national shows too. The same practice was done.
I
I think I remember reading that
yeah,
like for early night shows and things like that.
yeah, yeah, quite a bit. God, there was a process called, I think it was called kinescope. I'm not 100% sure on my term here. If you see a lot of there are even episodes of the Twilight Zone that were done this way because they were either
Oh,
broadcast live or they couldn't keep them. So someone would actually film a monitor on the set to record it for posterity or to have a permanent copy of it because they just couldn't keep there was nowhere to room. I mean, the videotapes were in like bins this big plastic containers that were this thick.
huh.
So that would be for, you know, maybe 30 minutes of on-air content. So it's unwieldy, it was huge, it was expensive, too difficult to store. So no one bothered. No one ever really thought that was going to want to watch this stuff again.
It went on for so many years.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to tell you, I mean, I want to get back to the Cadet Don stuff for a second, but just how you mentioned the names when we did have Carol and Paul on, and I first of all, they couldn't have been nicer. You know, I loved the show growing up. I loved Magic Garden growing up, and it was like one of my favorites. I did watch it for years. When they said that they were coming on this show, I was just ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic. It's like the same way you mentioned, like the quiz there, because it was like in childhood, and I've now actually spoken to Carol many times, you know, through just you know, other things arranging, and she's so nice off screen too. It's like, you know, I was so glad because we on the show we've talked about people that did not match expectations of what you see on air. So and she did. She could not have been nicer, and still nice. I spoke to her just this past week actually, and she's been so nice. But when they sang our names on the show,
Oh yeah.
I had such a reaction to that. It really, I was just like, I was giddy. I was just so happy that my name was being sang here. And here I am, like, you know, it's like 50 years after the show aired, and I'm still getting that same, you know, reaction inside me for that. It was like incredible. So I could see that, you know, the Quaid's getting all excited meeting your dad with that.
Well, these were really powerful shows, and the ones I watched, some of them impacted me greatly. A lot of them I was either too weird or too old to enjoy. And we'll run down some of these titles in a little bit, but I was very much aware. You know, I learned as a child what it meant to be a celebrity, and to have people know you everywhere you go, and having to make sure that you are that kind and generous personality in the real world that you are on television, because that audience is what keeps you on the air, and they want to know that they're meeting that same
Right.
person.
Is that
And
something that your
so
dad said to you? Do you remember that having that conversation ever? Like, you know,
yeah,
saying that
yeah,
you
we did,
have
we talked about
to
it a
be
lot. It didn't, the thing was, it didn't start to affect me until I was like, you know, 13 years old, when Escape to Witch Mountain um became so popular in the theaters, and I started getting recognized a whole lot. I realized pretty quick that you know, I wasn't allowed to have a bad day out there in the real world. I needed to really kind of pay attention to myself.
I
Um,
get that.
but also, you know, the back then, we're talking about a live TV show that was on every single day, and you couldn't afford to have, I mean, your fans, I mean, look, I have pictures of my father with the piles of fan mail that he would get. They had to have a
Huh.
department that answered these fan letters back, because those are the people that are watching the show. And you stop getting fan letters, your viewership goes down. Or if you don't take care of it, and especially in a local show, you have to feed the fan base. Otherwise, your show will suffer and probably, not survive. It's not so much the case these days, with certain other areas of the business where that's such a huge thing. Because I knew there was a point even in my early career where I started getting so many letters. It's like I didn't make enough money to hire somebody to be able to answer, send pictures back, and I was doing it myself. And I had school and homework and then fan mail to answer, and it was overwhelming. I finally had to stop. I mean, I just had to stop completely because it was too much. I mean, I was never a Bobby Sherman or a Leif Garrett with that kind of stuff, but enough came in that it was unmanageable for me. So thankfully it wasn't something that I had to do in order to maintain my career, because it was all, all of that was very, very different by the time I was
So when you used to go out as a family, your dad would get recognized all the time, like in the local areas.
all the time, all the time. Yeah, all the time. Yeah, it was very interesting. And it's he played the part well. He knew what he had to do, and he was willing to put in that to kind of give up that part of our private life to to make sure people were getting the full experience. And
Well,
he was kind of, magical to me.
Right, that's what I'm asking now. Was it? I mean, that obviously to me, like, of course, that had to have a huge influence on you wanting to do this as something yourself. You saw what happened from your dad, but was there ever any part that resentment that hey, we don't have any privacy?
Well, I was too young to really know what privacy meant. My father ate it up. I mean, usually,
Okay.
he had an ego, that went right along with the station in life he wanted to achieve. And so he liked the adulation, he liked the attention. He enjoyed it. It didn't bother him. But it's not like we were going out all the time, because that wasn't something that in the 60s, everybody ate at home.
Right. That's true.
Going to the movies was a special event. It wasn't something you did every weekend. So it really wasn't like we were out, mall walking on the weekends and
people dressed up for the movies too.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very different world then. So yeah, it wasn't like it was like this constant, buzzy thing. So, there's that part of it also, because we are so used to being out in the world now for so much of our lives that it's hard to imagine.
So when did you move to LA again? What year how old were you when you first moved to LA?
6 years old. So 1968.
So you were still within the age range that you could watch what kids shows were on there that might not have been back east?
Well, that's okay. So that's really funny, because we just had my dad's show on every day, right? So that's what I would watch.
It's still in LA.
Oh no, not in LA. In LA, I'm sorry. Once I got to LA, yeah. What the shows I came across, I started watching a lot of just cartoon shows, and like I said, I was a bit of an odd bird, as a young person. Things like Captain Kangaroo, I thought was silly. It was too young. It was too young for me. And one of the shows which I wanted to bring up here, because I found it particularly fascinating, and reading the backstory about it, it's made it even more interesting to me, was Wonderama.
I love Wonderama too.
Yeah. That was an amazing show because first of all, I didn't remember it was this long, but it ran for 3 hours Sunday mornings, because there really was nothing. I mean, you had your Saturday morning content, but Sundays was mostly like religious shows or news shows, or I don't know, stuff like that. And Wonderama was like the sole bastion of children's entertainment on Sunday mornings, kind of. And so I watched that a lot, because Wonderama, their format was, and we almost should have had it be a part of our variety shows show, because it was a 3-hour variety show. There was a principal host. He was funny. He could do skits, and he sang. There was a live audience with the of children there that he would engage with. The kids played games, would participate in little contests and win huge prizes. I mean, it was one of those things where the child that won would end up being handed like this stack of games, board games, and all this huge stack. And I just thought that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I wanted a stack, someone to just give me a stack of games. It just seemed so cool. And so they had celebrity guests on. I mean, I saw it was like everyone from Evel Knievel to Jodie Foster to all kinds of people have appeared as guest celebrities on the show. And then of course they have cartoon segments, because all these shows, you had to fill a lot of it with cartoons. So that was something I watched. I watched the Banana Splits.
I love that show so much.
And yeah, that was a wild one. And actually in point of fact, my father, who left the children's show world, moved to Los Angeles to become a quote unquote legit actor. And he ended up landing himself another children's hosting gig that he really hated. I got to be honest. He was not happy about it. And he just said, I didn't come out here to do another kid show. Good God. But
Which show is this?
I forget what I forgot the name of it. It was just one season, but it was like there was a kids game show, and it was primarily a cartoon show, and he had a Banana Splits character on it. So they showed Banana Splits cartoons, and there was one of them dressed up in one of the Banana Splits characters' costumes. And here he was again, just kind of doing the same old thing, and so he ended up, I think he actually left it at a certain point.
He did he?
Want to do it anymore? yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of those personalities that just do that. They're perfect for that for that segment of entertainment. And many of these people, like even from Wonderama, came from other children's programming, regional shows in other markets, and that's just what they do, and they're really good at it, which is why they were so popular, and they did so well. But anyway, yeah, that was my little list.
I loved Wonderama as well. I loved the Banana Splits. I loved all those Croft shows. And Sid Croft was another one that when he had him on, that I was just like, in awe, getting to talk to him because of all that stuff. But and he also seemed genuinely nice person, like off camera. But we watched. But you had you mentioned before that you watched the first Sesame Street. I love Street as well. Those weren't local ones, but those were the kids programming. And the loved one behind me, Electric Company, it seemed at one point, I don't remember when it was, like, you felt like you outgrew Sesame Street a little bit. And I don't know if it's the case. Electric Company seemed the next level to me, like the next age up. I don't know if that's even the case really, but that's what it seemed like to me. And it was like a little bit edgier, like, the characters were a little bit edgier, and Spider-Man on it, although we had like regular Spider-Man appearances on Electric Company. So I loved that. But I don't even think you, by that time when Electric Company came out, you were probably too old for this already.
Well, yeah, when Sesame Street came out, I was already too old for it. I was 7 years old when it was first broadcast, and I have told the story before, but very quickly.
Right.
Our second grade classroom, all of a sudden, I don't remember what time the show was on. It was like maybe 2:00 in the afternoon or something like that, or 1:00, and our teacher wheeled in a big TV and closed all the blinds and plugged it in, and did this big announcement that we were going to be watching this, this brand new educational show called Sesame Street. And then it came on, and it was fascinating because I love puppets. I mean, I love all of that. Yep. That was fun, but it was so fundamental and elemental, which is what it's supposed to be. So
Mhm.
I was already too old for it when it came out. And um an Electro Company, I never really watched. I just, I didn't want, I don't really know what Electro Company was about, or how, what its structure was, but I just felt like, okay, I got to learn all day at school. On the weekends, I just want to watch cartoons, or again, Sid Croft shows. That's really what I wanted to engage in, and I didn't. These other things were, it was too much work. My head was too full anyway.
Well, Electric Company had Morgan Freeman, Easy Reader. I remember that.
Ah,
And so I've actually been trying to get a couple of people from Electric Company on here, but I'm still going to try. But Bozo the Clown, did you watch that?
now see, I freaking hate Bozo the Clown. So I would often watch it like I was watching a horror movie, because I am not, I I am not a clown person. It's like the
Oh, me either. I hate him. I hate
yeah,
him.
I know you do. I know you do. I'm curious as to why. But I find it incredibly bizarre. I know there's a human in there,
Yeah.
and then it's talking and it's saying stupid stuff, and it's like, why would a grown person want to do this? I don't understand. I just found his entire persona to just be horrifying. It's just like, oh, good God, no. And
But you
I don't
had,
get.
but you saw it, right? You did. Here's
I
the
have
thing.
seen.
I know it was national audience, but I didn't see Bozo. I don't remember ever seeing Bozo when I was in New York, and I don't know what. I never saw it till I moved, funny enough, to Florida, and we got cable, and WGN was one of the stations, and then I saw Bozo, and I was already older there, but I don't remember ever watching it when I was the appropriate age, younger, and that by the time I did see Bozo, it was like, so but I don't remember seeing it in New York, and it must have been on because it was a national thing. But I have to look, but I
Well,
don't remember watching it at all.
it has an interesting history, because it goes back quite a ways. Bozo the Clown, the character, um, started out as like a comic book with records, and
Mhm.
then some. Okay, I'm trying to see what his name is here. Um, it oh gosh, why, it's like his name was everywhere when I was reading it. Now when I'm looking for it, I don't see it. But the gentleman who actually came up with the idea of turning it into a TV show, um, basically came up with a brilliant concept. He bought the rights to the Bozo character, created essentially that Bozo look, the costume and the makeup and the hair and all of that. And then he licensed out the idea to
Larry
other.
Harmon.
That's it. Well, no, that's the actor. There's maybe it
Oh,
is
so it was
him.
purchased by Larry Harmon,
There
created
you go.
by
Yeah,
Alan
Larry Harmon.
Epstein.
Yeah, there we are.
Right.
Thank you very much. I thought that was the one of the actors that played him. But so he licensed the idea out to Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, because I did see Bozo the Clown in Los Angeles in the earlier days. And yes, it was in New York, but it didn't go national until much later, because every region had a different actor portraying Bozo the Clown and doing
Right.
their own programming for it. Hmm. And then he decided that he wanted to make it a single performer. So he then eliminated that, created a show that then he could then further, they could syndicate to all those markets. So in other words, that was when it went essentially national, when the same show was being seen in every market. But up until like the mid 70s or something like that, what you were seeing was just somebody doing their own Bozo show in
So
your city. So I
okay,
thought that
I'm
was.
looking now. I don't think in New York when I was a kid. I'm looking up the history now, and I think it shows Boston and then later on Chicago, Massachusetts and Chicago. I don't think it was in New York when I was the appropriate age to see it. That's
Yeah,
what that's what I'm
I
reading
had
here.
another interesting website up here
It
earlier
showed it. It showed it in New York.
that's what I'm trying to see. Yeah, Bozo the Clown, WPIX. I don't know
Really?
I don't know what period of time it was there. But yeah, and there were a ton of children's shows on in New York.
And
And
Willard Scott from the Today Show played him for a bit.
yes, yes, exactly. Which is, that I can see.
I can see that too. And I
I
have
can
mentioned
totally
the
see
clown
that.
story before. I have mentioned it. To brief. Okay, I think I did mention it on the show. We had, and it never bothered me. We went to circuses when I was younger. My parents took me, and it didn't bother me. I was not a clown person, but it didn't bother me. But we had a paper mache clown hanging in the house, which I think I mentioned.
Yes.
Right, right, and it
Yes.
constantly turned in. No matter how we did it, we adjusted the ropes, and no matter how you put it, we did it so many times, and it kept turning into the house. It was like kind of creepy, but all right, didn't bother me. Then I saw Poltergeist, and that stupid clown just terrified me, terrified. And then after we came back from that, I wanted that clown down. I didn't want it in the house. I didn't
Yeah.
want to see it anymore. It just absolutely terrified me. And since then, forget it. And it bothered me and everything. And my daughters want to get me a clown for my birthday because they want to torture me. So that's how sweet they are.
Well, I'll have to show up
But
on the show one day in clown face and
yes,
and we'll
I
do a
absolutely
show.
hated it.
Yeah. Well, no,
But
I mean, the thing for me are the clowns that talk, and that's just it. It's like the circus clowns and the TV clowns, they have to talk. That bothers me. I think one of the most important decisions that Walt Disney ever made was none of the characters in the parks that are in costume are going to speak, because you then the children can relate directly to that soft, fluffy, wonderful character and not have to engage with it in some way other than in a mime-ish sense. And there was there's a couple things about clowns. There was another LA children's show called Hobo Kelly that again horrified me when it came on, because I did a quick I was kind of clown history has been interesting to me, and so I did a little bit more research this morning, and some of the original clown characters, the concept of clowns were based on hobos or vagrants or down and out characters. And so, Emmett Kelly, I think, is the most famous one of the circus
yes,
clowns.
yes.
Again, a hobo, tragic, kind of sad hobo character. But I don't know. I don't think that he spoke. I think a lot of those circus clowns didn't speak either. And interesting enough, people who have seen Cirque du Soleil shows or some of the original Cirque du Soleil shows will know this. But all of their clown, quote unquote, characters are based on the French performance of clown, in the sense that they wear a red nose, no makeup, and they don't talk. It's all squeaky sounds, and it's all mime, and it's all physical comedy. And I love those guys. Those people blow me away. They're extraordinary performers, and they don't creep me out. But man, you put that white clown makeup on and the exaggerated smiles, and it's like this is supposed to be happy, fun, and engaging. Oh my God, I just want to run screaming from the building.
Well, see, I find it much scarier when they don't talk. When they talk, I get like, see, when they won't talk, it's like, speak to me. Like I want to, they just give a little honk of the horn, and it would drive me nuts. But,
yeah. Oh yeah. But see, I can get that too. I get that too. Both sides of it are equally strange. I mean, they just are. They just are.
Well, I want to go. It's funny. All right, going back to some of the other children's shows. There, Mr. Rogers, I loved, and that was everywhere.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Like, and I even later on when I moved, there was like a period, like even in my teens, just like, I guess, watching back old Mr. Rogers shows again, there was, because it was still on at the time. And he just, such an incredibly nice person. And you felt that warmth coming from him, that he genuinely cared about the kid. And I love seeing all the, biographies about him, afterward. He was really a nice person. So that was nice. Magic Garden, it sometimes gave way to like another show, which I do remember watching, but I was Joya's Fun School. But I would get angry when those days when Joya was on instead of Magic Garden. So this was good, but it's not Magic Garden. And she was a nice person also. But there was one also that we watched, which I don't know if you watched that, but I think it was national also, the Spanish one, Via Alegre. Did you remember watching that as a kid?
You know what? That sounds vaguely familiar. So, but no, I don't remember seeing it.
Because, I grew up because it was like Spanish themed, Mexican themed, and, I'm half Mexican. My dad was Mexican. So we did watch that a lot in the house. And I did love that show. And I also, that's another show that I've been trying to look for people who are on it to try to get over here. So
sure.
Having a tough time right now with that. But that was another one that I really enjoyed a lot, watching that one.
Yeah.
So
I'm just trying to think if there are any other titles. Let me look at my little cheat sheet here for a second. Yeah, no, I mean, Romper Room I was aware of, but I didn't watch it.
I watched Romper Room as well.
And Romper Room is another example of a syndicated show, apparently, because there were different hosts in different cities. Each show had its own production.
That I didn't realize either.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
I just learned that this morning. It was an interesting concept and way of sort of creating a national brand without necessarily having to produce something expensive enough
on a larger scale.
Yeah.
So it's much cheaper than just to do a local little each place to do one local show than to have just syndicated everywhere.
Yeah. It's I don't know why. I don't know what the economics are or quite how it works, but the second you try to take
they just wanted to localize the show and talk about things in the area. Is that another thing?
I don't really know. I don't know that much about it. Because the thing about every single TV station in the United States is essentially independent. They make deals with the networks, especially back in the over-the-air broadcast days. I mean, if KNBC in New York licensed the content from NBC, like the TV station licensed the content from NBC, or the same with CBS and ABC. You had to pay for that. It didn't just get sent to your station for you to be able to, because all your ad revenue is based for local stations is based on not only national ad revenue but local ad revenue. I mean, you got your local car salesman, and then Toyota advertises across the board. So it's a very complicated industry of licensing deals and money that goes back and forth and how all that's paid. And there are even major markets that don't carry national shows because they just don't want to license that show. So you can't watch something in New York or Los Angeles that you might be able to see in San Diego, because that station just doesn't want to license it. They want to run something else. And it's very interesting. It's very convoluted in many ways, and I'm doing a terrible job probably sharing this information. But when you own your own station and you own your own content, you're not paying anybody else for it. So basically you're just paying your on-air personalities and whoever puts it together, and your camera people and sound people, and they're paid and done, and all the ad revenue goes to your station. It doesn't have to be shared anywhere else or in any other way. So
interesting. This look, to me, this was a fun topic to cover. I just every show when I looked up was just like, smiles. I just smiled and like, oh yeah, I love this. I love that show. And it was fun getting to watch old clips of that. And like I said, that's exactly why with when we did the Magic Garden one, it was just I was all smiles. I don't think I stopped grinning the whole show when we had them on.
Yeah.
So, but I will have to try to find some others. But no, this was fun. This was definitely a fun one. And let us know what you think. Let us know if there's shows that we're missing, if there's shows that we didn't cover, if what you thought of some of these, and if you have a fear of clowns as well.
Definitely.
But again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann, and please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.